Hi everyone, my name's Charlie and I'm a baby sign language teacher. And as well as uploading new videos every day of nursery rhymes and stories and signs that you can do with your baby and toddler to start communicating with them, I also like to do how-to videos every Friday for the grown-ups for a bit of background information. And I'm really interested in how sign can help speech and language development. So today I'm going to be speaking to a speech and language therapist called Jenn Warwick.
I'm a paediatric speech and language therapist. I worked for the NHS for a long time and then had two children of my own. So at the moment I do a mixture of things. I work for a charity for children with Down syndrome. I work clinically with a caseload of children. I'm doing some further study, and I've also just recently I'm trying to set up sort of workshops and courses for all parents, just because I think since becoming a parent I've realized how useful the advice of speech and language therapists is. So that's kind of, I do a big mixture of things.
And it was actually that last point that really got me interested as well, because I feel as though we are going in a very similar direction in that.
Yes.
The reason that I do what I do is that so many people think that sign language is only for children who are deaf or who have additional needs or disability. And I really want to be able to show parents it is incredible for all babies and all parents to help them communicate. And that's pretty much what you're trying to do, but with speech and language.
Absolutely. I mean, I think now, communication, it's so fundamental to everything that we do, but it's also the most common of all the developmental delays. So 1 in 10 children, might have delay with their talking. So it's very common, but also I think there's now so much pressure on parents to be doing things, to be looking at apps, to be doing, loads and loads of different things.
Milestones to the day.
So doing all these things that actually sometimes it takes away just from how you can support your child in everyday interactions, just by playing and chatting to them and those sorts of things. I also, a bit like you were saying, feel really passionate about just supporting parents in how to support their children, because it's quite stressful if you think, actually they're not doing this, or should they be doing this, and how can we encourage these skills as well? So definitely.
Well, that's perfect, because I actually wanted to ask you if you could give us 3 tips this morning on what parents can do very, very simply and very easily at home that isn't going to be too overwhelming.
Absolutely, we can do 3 tips. So I guess one of the main things is when children are first starting to communicate, it's so natural to be asking them questions. So I think,
parents of this,
we naturally fall into that tester kind of role. We look at a book and we might be saying, what's that? What's that? What's that? I think
I was doing that. I have to say, I was doing that thinking I was helping Etta's sort of understanding and her language development. So this is something I'm really interested to understand more on.
And I think what the research shows us is that actually, if we make them comment, so we might be saying, look, it's a dog, or the dog's running, or just giving the language, so we're modeling it. It's a far better way of teaching language than just asking questions. It's also, if you're having a conversation with someone, yourself, if someone was just asking you, what did you do at the weekend? What did you eat? You don't tend to want to answer. And I think even I see that with older children. So my eldest daughter is 4, she's in reception, and parents are always telling me, oh, I asked them what they did today, and they always say nothing. And actually you get so much more out of them if you say something. So make a comment like, I did something funny today, or something funny happened to me, or maybe offer a choice. So did you play inside or outside? You'll tend to get much more language back and be much more reciprocal. But in little ones, just instead of asking them questions all the time, just comment on what they're doing, or maybe offer them a choice. So instead of saying, what do you want to eat? You might say, do you want a biscuit or do you want an apple? So you're giving them a choice. They're hearing the language, they're getting to see the object, match the word on as well.
Okay,
that's probably the first tip.
That makes a lot more sense to me, definitely, to be able to comment on stuff. I'm going to try that tonight with bedtime story with Etta, because I know I'm really, really guilty of that.
Yes, definitely. And the second one, I think, really relates to what you do. So I think a lot of parents, actually, they always ask, well, if I do something like signing, is it going to stop language? And I think there's often maybe a slight hesitancy about that. I don't know if you notice that, if parents ask that as well.
One of the biggest obstacles, it's a question that I get asked a lot, and I think it's one of the obstacles in me reaching as many parents as possible, because there is this in the back of people's minds, like you say, that they think that sign will delay speech development. And I've had so many conversations with parents about that. So I definitely know it from my end as well.
Yes, yes. And actually, I think using gestures, so we know that from the research that children who gesture lots actually are more likely to have bigger vocabularies. I think it's not that well known, but I think there's a great, it's American, it's called the First Words Project. They talk about a big milestone as having 16 gestures by 16 months, which is great because actually that's far more predictive of vocabulary than, you know, having looking for milestones in terms of how many words that a child might be saying. So I think using gestures is great, using signs, because it helps children to understand, and it also helps them to learn words as well. It's a really great strategy to use. I also think if you're signing or using gestures, it naturally helps us to slow our rate of speech down. And I think we're really guilty of sometimes talking to children and babies like they understand everything. And sometimes I go to these lovely baby groups and I just think, I wish you'd slow it down a little bit or use a little bit of a shorter sentence. Whereas actually, if we're signing, do you want some more? Instead of using a great long sentence, would you like some more biscuit or would you like some more milk? It's slowing your rate of speech down. So actually your child's able to really focus on what you're saying and focus on the key words and help them to learn those words. So I would say using gestures and signs is really, really important. And there's a whole load of research which kind of backs up how it's important for vocabulary, how it's important when children start to learn to read. And it's also a really nice thing you can do when you're just out and about. You don't have to feel like, oh, I need to get a book or I need to, you know, get some sort of thing to be focusing on. You can just do it and it just becomes part of your everyday routine, you know, washing hands, bedtime. I know you've been doing some really nice bedtime routine signs this week, and I think those things are great because they just fit into what parents are doing every day, and it's about making it easy, isn't it, rather than having to think of something else to do because you've already got enough to do.
Okay, I'm so pleased that you've said that about sign language, because it's something I say to people, but I think with my background, you know, just being in baby sign language, I don't feel as though I always have the kind of weight and authority to say to people, you know, it absolutely won't say their speech. And I definitely had that experience with my daughter. She was an early talker, and her nursery have always said that not just her language, but that her communication skills are quite advanced for her age. And obviously I have nothing to compare that to, but in my mind, I really do believe that is down to signing.
It absolutely is. And I think also children who, I mean, it kind of makes sense. The research shows that children who have more language are less likely to have tantrums, which makes sense because you know, I know from my own children that if they can express what they want, then they're much less likely to get frustrated about it. I mean, it might not be something they can have, but
they can communicate it.
Exactly. And I think I used signing with my eldest daughter, and she was signing for books. She was signing from about 9-10 months, and she was so delighted. And things like her first word was actually row, like row, row the boat, but she'd been doing a sign for boat before and initiating before she was 1, which is, you know, I think again she was quite early in terms of her talking. My second daughter was much later, and I think it's also highlighting that's fine too. Not everyone will speak, you know, super early, but I think actually using the gestures and using the signs is a really helpful way just to support that. Definitely.
Good, brilliant, thank you. And your third tip?
Third tip, I think, is to remember that language starts with interaction. So you have to interact. And I think sometimes we're so busy, there's so many distractions, you know, you're always doing something. And in very little children, so children under 1, they're amazing, they're learning so much language, they're picking up on what you're doing all of the time, but actually there's a lot you can be doing with them even when they're really small. So just strategies like being face to face, being at their level. It's quite scary if you think about it. I don't know if you probably never have tried it, but you could try it. If you crouch down, say you're at the height of a little one, and then have someone stand up and kind of talk over you, it's really quite scary, and you probably are not going to want to talk to someone who's that high.
That is the story of my life, actually. I'm 5 foot tall, so everybody's really tall to me. So
I think just that thing of being face to face with your child, getting down at their level, even when they're really little, so they can see you, so you can be having that interaction. That's what's so important. And I think, yeah, following their lead in the same way as questions. We so often, we'll buy I'm guilty of it too. I come home with a great game for my kids and I'm like, right, we're going to do this. And actually they're not remotely interested in it. They want to do something completely different. And I'm slightly frustrated. But actually, if you're following their lead in terms of their interaction, so focusing on what they're interested in, they're going to be much more likely to communicate about it. In the same way as going back to when you have a conversation with a friend, you're generally talking about things that you're interested in. So if you follow their lead, and you sort of get face to face, you're at their level, you're kind of saying to them, I'm here, I'm ready to engage with you, and I'm interested in what you've got to say, even before they're using language. They're just going to pick up on that, and they're going to want to communicate with you much more. So that's probably the last one. And I think the last thing, I think a lot of parents feel that they need to be doing flashcards. Sorry, my light's just gone off. They need to be doing, they need to be doing flashcards. They need to be doing all of these sorts of things. And actually, we don't. I think having those interactions, playing and chatting is what's really important and key for language.
Something that sometimes worries me. I think, I'm not doing enough. I need to go on Amazon and I need to buy something. Yeah. I need to buy something, and then I'll be ticking up the box and doing the job. But I need to sort of learn beyond that.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. And I think there's a really there's a great study which shows that actually it's about two-way conversations that children have with you. So being able to have reciprocal two-way conversations, which kind of, they're responding to you, you're responding to them. It's kind of hard to think about having a conversation with a 2-year-old, but you definitely can. They might be pointing at something and saying, horsey, and you're saying, yeah, and just building on what they're saying. And I think my message to parents, I think, is not to feel you've got to be going out and buying stuff and really focusing on this. It's actually about the interaction and the time that you spend together that's really, really helpful.
That's really interesting, because I think it's a guilt thing with me, that maybe I feel I've been working too much, and the way to counteract that, I'll buy something, and then, but yes. I know it's not about that, and it's easier and more enjoyable and more affordable to actually just sit down and have a conversation with Etta than anything I could buy her.
Absolutely. And I think in your play, I think when children are getting older, so kind of when they're about 2, it's really important that they hear different types of words. So if you were playing, I don't know, if you were playing shops and you're saying, just including different types of words. So rather than always saying, the bananas, the apples, you might be adding in action words. So we need to buy them, we need to pay. So they're hearing lots and lots of different types of words and more complex language as well, and modeling that to them.
Oh, that's amazing. I'm sure you've got so many more tips that you could be giving us as well, but I think that's a really good starting point.
Yeah, brilliant.
For parents. And there was something that we wanted to put out to the parents watching this as well.
Yeah, definitely.
We live very close to each other, and we really like the idea of putting something together for new parents on how they can start building speech and language and communication skills. Yeah. From a very, very young age, using sort of your expertise and my expertise with baby signers, putting them together. So we'd like to kind of throw it out to everybody what form or what shape they'd like to see that take, so we can start kind of tailoring something and catering it to people's needs.
Yeah, absolutely. It would be great, because I think it's got to be useful for parents. That's why it's so useful to hear what people would like and what's most helpful for them. Definitely.
Okay, brilliant. Well, hopefully we'll have some good feedback and we can get something, perhaps something online we've talked about, because obviously we're in circumstances at the moment that we can't meet up and do something locally, but it'd be really good to reach more people online anyway.
Definitely.
Thank you so much for today.
No problem. That's really nice.
It's been a huge help to me, so I know it's going to be a massive help to other people.
Awesome. All right. Well, have a lovely day.
And you, take care.
Bye.